Okay, let me just show this character in the map first, just as a proof of concept, and then we can go and talk about everything after that. Because I think this is what would draw somebody in to want to play this in the first place. Rather than me starting the video just standing in town, you know, talking about what the build's capable of. Why don't I show it in a tier 15 map? One with good density as well, so I think this will be good to showcase the character. Of course, this is not a meta build by any means. You know, you're probably not even watching this video if you're trying to play a much faster character. You're probably already playing on whatever lightning spear character that you're on. But I think this is kind of fun and satisfying. I just wanted to try something different. It can probably scale pretty well beyond where I'm at currently with it, but at the same time I also don't think, you know, it's never going to be a good bossing character. You know, it's never going to be the most efficient mapper. But at the same time, it's pretty damn cool in my opinion. You know, just all these comets casting and everything like that. You know, certain maps, certain mobs and stuff like that, you're gonna have to be more or less careful, you know, with just how you approach everything, the speed that you play. You know, but at the same time, you know, you can also get away with playing it a little bit reckless, like right here. This mob must be proximal tangibility or some shit, because he should be long dead by now, honestly. So certain things like that, you know, you have to pay attention to a certain degree. I think that's just what the developers want. Yep, he's proximal tangibility, I fucking knew it. But it's just what the devs are going for with this game. Like, I should have read the mod on that one single mob amongst the 30 other ones that are moving 500 miles per hour. You know, my bad. I need to read faster. You know, things like that. Like, some things, you know, are a skill issue, and patience is a skill as well. You know, if I want to rush forward constantly rather than wait on my AI who's snagging on the corner because he tries to do a leap attack into the corner where he can't move and he's stuck and he's being useless. You know, that's a skill issue on my behalf that I ran forward without properly waiting for him strategically. So anyways, I think that showcases the actual like gameplay of the character. Let's go through all the skills and everything, and then the gear, passive tree, all that good stuff. So we got Cast on Freeze with Comet, Spell Cascade, Impetus, and Comet again. Cast on Shock with Comet, Energy Retention, and Fluke. Hypothermia with Heightened Curse and Expanse. Frost Bomb with Fast Forward, Spell Echo, Considered Casting, and Magnified Effect. Then we have a Quadrilla who has Temporal Bubble, Elemental Army, Meat Shield, and then Last Gasp. Then we have Arctic Armor with Supercritical, Glaciation, and Frost Nexus. We were trying a little strategy where we would have this on swap, one of these Sire of Shards, because it shoots out your projectiles in a circle, and we combine that with Wild Shards, and we would do Frostbolt, and it would just send out shards in a circle. I'll show it real quick. It would send shards out in a circle, and it was good, except for the fact that whenever we would swap, because we didn't have the scepter in our offhand, it would literally just despawn our minion. So our defensive layer would go down, and it didn't feel good, so I just literally stopped using it. But I could literally do this, and for some reason it doesn't want to proc there it goes. But it makes the whole ground cold, so everything slows down, so it's nice for defenses and everything. You can add that in. But you know, if you're using a scepter and you have a ton of spirit that you need, it despawns him the moment that you weapon swap, so that's kind of annoying. I stopped doing it literally because of that reason. That was my whole approach to the skill rotation. As far as the passive tree, this is what we have. The reason that I have cast on shock is because I've got Shaper of Storms. All damage from hits contributes to shock chance. I just think that's a cool little thing. You can do it as well with Shaper of Winter if you're using a non-cold skill to build up your chill and freeze and stuff like that. You could do some really cool stuff with this. I think this is one of the coolest ascendancies because of that reason. You can really do a lot of theory crafting. I only have 2 out of my 4, or I only have 3 out of my 4 ascendancies. I don't even think you need more than 2 of them for this particular build, but having all of them is obviously going to be better. This is the way that we've pathed. I've gone specifically for a bunch of area of effect. You can drop that and go for like more crit chance and stuff like that, more crit damage bonus, and take things out faster. That's probably the way to go as you scale things higher and higher. But this is what we're going with for the moment. We're only level 84. We definitely could use some more levels. We definitely could use some better gear, you know, all that. You can always use better. But this is what we got so far. Gonna go over the gear. So here's the wand. I really think crit chance for spells is really good on here, plus level to cold skills. I really think crit chance for spells is really good on the wand. Spell damage, plus level to cold skills, mana regen, intelligence, things like that. Cast speed doesn't really matter for this character, so that's one thing to think about. As far as our rings are both really terrible. You know, we've got the cold damage on there. This one's got physical damage to attacks, which is useless for us. You know, we've got dex and int, you know. Cover your res with your rings. Some cold damage is nice. Life is always great. Mana's great. Int, you know, stats that you need. These gloves are honestly the biggest, like, unique thing, the most valuable thing of this character. I bought them yesterday for 1 divine. Your hits can penetrate elemental resistances down to a minimum of -50. This means previously without the gloves you could only drive it down to 0 resistance, but now we can get it to -50. And because we're wearing Pandemonious, they automatically are at 0 resistance, like any of the enemies in the game, unless you're in a map with a mod that has like +30 to their res or whatever. So we always have them down to 0 res at least, but we've also gone and we've invested into getting some of our penetration, getting some of our elemental exposure, cold exposure specifically, as well as other stuff on our passive tree. So you can go here and look on the tooltip, and it's not going to tell you how much exposure you have, but if you just go and you swap one of your support gems out, it's going to tell you. Look at the cold res pin, 151. So if you have 125, so 151 minus 30 is what we really have. But if you have 125, you automatically have the enemy at -50 resistance. And then you apply cold exposure on top of that, which is on this. You know, you get cold exposure increase from things like this. You get cold exposure increase from things like this right here. You know, you got cold pin you can get right there, which I don't need. I could benefit from more cold exposure effect. You know, I could use the support gem strip away, and that one gives 20% increased effect of the exposure. So we can possibly get the enemy resistance to -75, and if we're doing that, we're doing double damage on them. So these gloves are just really good in general. I really think that these are a game changer for a lot of builds possibly. I haven't heard very much about them either. I think they're amazing personally. They're one of the biggest damage multipliers you can get on a pair of gloves. We're using Ingenuity. Headhunter's probably the best belt, but we're too broke for that, so we're just using what we have. We got some random boots. We could use 10 more move speed on the boots, but you know, it is what it is. I honestly don't even think it's gonna feel too much different. Like, the pace of the gameplay feels kind of slow this season, especially compared to last, but maybe that's because I had Temporalis. So here's the chest piece. You know, as usual, we're going with a theme of not very good gear that can be optimized way better. But as you could see, we're able to do a tier 15 map. So, you know, it's just a matter of doing it more efficiently. So we got Scepter right here in the offhand. It grants Malice, which gives critical weakness on the enemies, like the bosses, on the rare mobs that don't die right away. So that's nice to have. Then we got Heat Shiver. 1% of cold damage is extra fire damage per 1% chill magnitude on the enemy. I think maybe if we were using like Frostbolt, Archmage, high cast speed, and we were just spamming out Frostbolts over and over again, almost like a Spark style character, then maybe something like the Heat Shiver might be better. So we might wind up switching this helmet out for something more defensive. You know, Aziri's Disdain might be good. We might switch the helmet out for something like Keeper of the Ark to get the less damage from hits, less damage over time. You know, if we, you know, I might have to try this out because, you know, defensively is where we feel like we're lacking the most on this character at this point in time, at least. I got better rings to get, better chest piece to get, better boots to get. I can replace almost every single piece of gear that I have on this character except for the gloves. And it's gonna get better, but it's not gonna be too much different than what it is now. And you know, I could make a video after dumping 200 hours more into playing this character and share it with you guys, and it's maybe gonna look 20% different. So why should I, honestly? If you're interested in it, you can take it and run with it. Let my footsteps be your flight.